So in this video, I'm going to teach you how to use these images. You can also use your own images instead of this boy here. And we are going to change it into this one. So it's going to be a digital artwork, a lot of fantasy in this. So we're going to blend these images better together, create this whole setting, create depth and all the other special effects and stuff like that. So I will show you all the things you need to do. I will also show you how to remove backgrounds from images correctly. So it's gonna be a lot of fun. So I hope to see you in this class and you will learn a lot of interesting stuff. Now, before I start, make sure to check out my Photoshop courses. I will leave a discount in the description of the video and also the link to them. And maybe you want to learn more in Photoshop, check them out. There's a lot of different artworks in the courses. Let's start from the beginning. The images that I have here in this class are PNG files mostly, and they don't have a background, which means we don't have to spend time on removing backgrounds for images. These are pretty easy to use. This one does have a background. We will easily remove the background from this one when we get there. And this one also has a background. So this is the image I'm going to use to show you how to remove backgrounds correctly. This is actually pretty easy because it has one color, but I will also show the process of how to remove a background if it's a different color or maybe a lot of stuff is going on in the background. So you might want to use your own photo for this. I have this photo. You can also use this one. That's all on you. So let's just start off with this image, with dragging this image into Photoshop, and it will open automatically. Now, if you have a photo that has like one color background, maybe white or something like this, yellowish, you can always go to select and click on subject. And with select subject, it will automatically select, or at least try to select, the subject that is in this image. And you can see here, it does a pretty good job. If you have an older version of Photoshop, you might not have this feature. So that way you need to cut out the image itself by using the pen tool, which I will show in a minute. Now, if you do have this feature and it works for your image, or you have this image, you can see here it made already the selection for us. But as you can see here, it's not really correctly. There is a little mistake here. It doesn't select the image correct. So what we need to do here is to fix these little parts. Now, if we go to the quick selection tool or press right mouse, we can select the quick selection tool. And here we can select plus and minus. Now, if we select plus and we make a selection, it's going to add some selection to it. If we select minus, it's going to remove some selections. Now I'm going to press Ctrl Z or Command Z on Mac to go back, because I don't want this. I need plus. So I'm going to make the selection like this. And this is basically what you have to do around the whole image. You have to check the whole image and add a little bit of selection. Now you can see here we have some more yellowish here. That is something that you shouldn't worry about. It's better to have extra selections from the background instead of minus extra selections from the background, because if it's like this, it's harder to later fix. So have some extra background so it doesn't matter much, because if you make the selection, you can always brush a little bit. Now, this is the first way to make this selection. Now, once you have this whole selection of your image, you can just go right here to the bottom and click on add a mask, and it made this selection. And you can see how easily I removed the backgrounds. Now, this part here obviously needs to be fixed, because this is the background, the yellowish, also this a little bit here. So this is the first part. Now, to fix all these little things like these, I would first make the background grayish, because I can barely see what's going on here. So I would go here and select this and select solid color, the first one. Now, and here I will take the mouse and click here and drag it somewhere in the middle to have a neutral color like gray. Press OK. Now that's it. Now, if I take this layer here we have the layers, and if I click on it and hold my mouse, I can drag it underneath it. And that way I will put it behind this image that's above it. Now, I'm just to tell you how I zoom out, I hold down Alt and I scroll my middle mouse, or you can hold down Option on Mac if you're using a Mac. So I can zoom out, zoom in quickly. I don't have to spend time. And if I hold down space on my keyboard, I can move the artboard around, right? So zoom out and move with space. Now, these parts here are need to be fixed. We can easily do this with the quick selection tool like we did before. You can see here it made selection, but it's not really good. So now we're going to use the pen tool. The pen tool you can find here, or you can press P on your keyboard to select the pen tool. Make sure you have path here selected and not shape, because we want to make a path and we don't want to draw a shape now. We want to make a path to remove it. So first we're going to select the point here. It doesn't really matter where you select the point. You can also start somewhere else, but I like to start at corners. Now we make another point here. And if we click and hold the mouse, we can stretch it out like that to go exactly in the same line as this image. Now, if we hold down Option, I'm still holding my mouse now. If I hold down Option or Alt on Windows, I can take this little anchor point and bring it to the start. And this way I can start over. You can see here, I can start over. And if I don't hold my mouse, or sorry, if I don't hold Alt here, I can make these curves, because the direction it goes like this anchor point. So if I would do this and hold the Alt again, I would have like a really hard corner here. I don't want a hard corner there. I want to make a soft, round swirl here. So I'm not going to hold Alt. You hold Alt or Option and Mac when you want to enter the point, like here when you have some hard corners. Right, so let's do this here. Don't hold Alt, I just hold my mouse until I have the right direction. So just check where the finger goes and also make that direction with that point. Now at this point I have to hold Alt again, because you can see here the anchor point goes inside its finger. If I don't hold Alt, I cannot go there, right? So press here, make this curve, hold down Alt to bring this point to the center, so we can start over like that. Alt, there. Right, so do this around this whole finger. Try to be as precise as possible. When you do this a couple of times, you learn how to work with this, and it's pretty easy. Now we have a really big curve here, so usually I try it to see if it works. For this one, it works. We can hold down Alt here again to go back here and close it. Now, when you go to the first point again, you just close it. Once you have that selection, press right mouse, make selection. And here you can set the feather radius. So for 1 pixel, it would have a little bit of a blur at the edge. If you have 0 pixels, it's gonna make a hard cut like you use some scissors on paper, right? So we want to have it natural. So I'm gonna use 1, so it's a little bit softer. Press OK, and that's it. And now if you press D on your keyboard, you can bring the colors to default. You can see here it gets black. And now if you rotate this, put black in the background, make sure you select the mask now and not the layer. So the mask here. And press Control Backspace or Command Backspace. Sorry, we have to make sure the black is in the background. Control Backspace, and that is gone. We made that selection. So this is what you could do for all the parts that are needed to remove. So the same goes for this part here. We need to fix that helmet, and it would be pretty easy to just select this part, make this like this curve. Try to do this a bit precisely, and maybe all the way here. Hold on Alt, bring it to the start, and just do it like this to close it. Let's see, this was his helmet, I think. I accidentally removed a piece of his helmet, but it doesn't matter. This is just to show you how it's done. Again, press right mouse, feather at 1, press OK. Click on the mask to make sure you have the mask. Make sure the background is black. Press Control Backspace, and that is gone. Right, and if you just select the rectangle marquee tool, you click on this, it makes the selection gone. All right, so this is the selection we have already. So already moved the background from this image. So that is pretty easy. Now, let me remove the layer mask again here to show you. So this is from the start again. If this doesn't work for you, or you don't have select subject, maybe sometimes you have an old version, it doesn't really work that well, or you have an other image of yourself and you want to remove the background, just start with the pen tool from the very beginning. So just take the pen tool here, make sure you have path here selected, and just zoom in, hold the Alt, scroll your middle mouse, and just pick a point somewhere, maybe this corner here, and just hold on space, move it a bit to the left, and start with making the selection and go around your subject with this. So this is actually better than using the automatic thing from Photoshop because this is really precisely, and I always try to use this one. Of course, it takes a little bit more time. It's a bit boring work to do, but if you get used to it and if you don't mind spending a lot of time on creating something really cool, then you don't mind on cutting objects out. So I have in this project all these files that are PNG, so you don't have to do this, but I just wanted to show you for this first chapter to how to remove the background. So once you do this on the whole image, so for instance, you've done this on the home image, I'm just gonna go quickly to show you. And you go to the first point again. Of course, you do this correctly, not like me now. You go to the first point again, you make a selection, you have feather one radius, you press OK, and you just make a mask and your background is gone. So that's pretty easy, but oh, I'm gonna remove the layer mask again. I'm gonna use select subject here, and I'm gonna make my selection like this, and just gonna brush it quickly. Now it's time to start with the artboard. Now, first of all, if you had problems with removing this background from the previous chapter, I will save this image also as a PNG file, so don't worry about it. You can also use this image if you want. Okay, now the first thing after you made the selection is press right mouse and convert this to a smart object. So we have like one layer without any masks we can use for the design. Now let's start with creating a new file by pressing Ctrl N or Command N or going to File, New. Now, and here we can select the size we want and all the other stuff. So resolution doesn't matter because we only work for digital now. If you work with pixels, the resolution doesn't matter. Now, if we make something like 2160 by 2700, that will be fine. This is a portrait size, not too big, not too small. It's good enough to work. If you have older computer, you could also probably work with this size. Now let's leave this at 72 and all the other stuff, it doesn't matter here. Create. Now let's go back to the boy and just start with taking this image. Make sure you have this layer selected and just drag it in our new image. Now you can see here he's way too big for this image, so we have to resize this boy. Now if we press Ctrl or Command on Mac and T on your keyboard, you can bring the free transform window. Now if you take one corner, you can make it smaller and bigger, and you can see it stays in the right ratio. If you have an older version in Photoshop, it might stretch out like this, so you have to hold down Shift on older versions of Photoshop. But in the latest versions, they changed that, so you don't have to hold Shift. If you see this going on, this strange thing, hold down Shift so it doesn't stretch out like that. All right, so let's put this boy somewhere in the center here. I think we will put him somewhere here. Let's leave it like this for now. Okay, we now need to import the other images. We have like these images here. These castles will be for the background and these rocks will be the foreground. So let's start with taking these rocks and put them here. Now this will be our foreground. The boy will be placed on the rocks. So let's first see, let's first make it small like this. So we can remove these and let's put it behind the boy. So just drag the layer underneath it. And now if we zoom in, here you have a little eye that you can enable, disable, and this means you're not showing the layer. So if you just want to work with this, you can disable it for a couple minutes until you're done, and then you can enable it again. So usually I just disable if it's annoying, distracting me. So I'm gonna disable this for now, and then click on the layer of the rocks. And now we want to remove this background from the rocks. So I'm gonna select the quick selection tool here. If you press right on mouse on it, you can select these. And let's make the brush a bit bigger here. You can here set the size. And let's see if we can make a selection of these rocks. So I'm gonna select them first like this. You can also see here we took a little bit of the background. Probably doesn't matter. And let's just click here a couple times. If you hold down Alt and scroll again, you can zoom in. And let's make a selection here. You can make the brush smaller on these areas. I'm not sure how this button is called to make your brush smaller and bigger, but it's next to the letter P on your keyboard. So if you press these buttons next to the letter P, you can make them smaller and bigger brush. All right, so let's do this here and also here. Oh, if you accidentally took the whole part, press Command Z or Control Z to go back. You can see here it takes too much there. So I'm not gonna go there. Let's zoom out. And let's do here, here. Oh, it takes a little bit too much there. So I'm gonna make the brush a bit smaller, like that. And you can see here it takes way too much parts here. So I'm gonna leave this part out. I'm gonna remove that with the pen tool. So first let's make the selection, and if you wanna remove this again, let's do a bit here. I'm just trying to do this a bit right. So now that's there. Let's leave it like this. It doesn't really matter because this will be the background. Now I'm gonna press here to make a mask. And you can see here this part is gone. We need to bring that back. So I'm gonna click on the mask here and then select the brush tool. So if you go here to the brush, you select the brush tool. Then go here to the settings. You can set the size. Let's leave the hardness at 100% so we have a hard edge. Make sure you have white here selected and here 100% for the opacity and flow. Now I can bring back these parts. If I just brush here, I can bring these back. Right, so let's brush a bit there. And for these parts, we need to remove this. So I'm gonna take the brush again, but change it to black to remove it. And that's gone. So that's fixed already. And maybe this part here, I can just easily take the pen tool here and make a selection of this. So I'm gonna do this quickly. Doesn't really matter. This is in the background, so you probably won't see that much. Like that. Make a selection, close it, press right mouse, make selection, press OK. Make sure you have black in the background and press Control Backspace. All right, once you have all these little things done here, you can do this a bit more precisely than I did, like this. Just don't make these weird corners. Make it a bit like that so it looks like real rocks. All right, we have these rocks here now. The next thing to do is to add the other stuff here. We have the boy already in our thing, in our composite. And let's just import our castle now. So this will be somewhere in the background. So just take it here and drag it in the background. Maybe like this. I think these rocks need to be a little bit more big. So I'm gonna press Ctrl or Command T and make them bigger. Because we only filled the bottom area, I want to see them a bit more. And if we hold on Shift, we can stretch it out a bit like that so it fills up this area nicely. Maybe even bigger. Oh, just like that. Take this castle again and press Ctrl or Command T. Make this bigger like that. This will be somewhere in the background. Now I have another castle. Maybe you can place like 2 castles. Maybe one there. You can also be creative and maybe have another composite with different places for this castle. I will make this smaller, like it's behind it, somewhere there. All right, and let's see what we have here. We have rocks, we have the boy, we have the moon, we have the clouds. I'm not sure at this point if these clouds will work, but I will place them in the background like that. Let's just put them there. Let's make this big. Let's see. Just something like this. You can see here this image. Let's see which one is it. This castle has a background, so we need to remove this a bit. So I'm gonna select the magic wand tool here and just press on this area, press delete. Make sure it's a rasterized layer first. So press right mouse, rasterize it, and then select this area and press delete. You can see here it wasn't a really good PNG file. Sometimes that happens. And also select this area, just press delete, press this and press here. Now go back to your magic wand tool, select this area and press delete. And that's pretty much gone. And you can brush these parts a bit away with the eraser here. Just make sure you don't affect the castle itself like that. So that's really easy fixed. And now make sure to press right mouse and convert to a smart object again, or else when we resize the image, it's gonna lose the quality. All right, so this is probably fine. I'm gonna leave it like this for now. I can always change it later on. Now, the boy here that we disabled, we can enable again, and he will be placed somewhere here. And now we can make the composite a bit better. I think we need to move this a bit more up like that. And the boy also a bit more to the center. Let's put him on this rock. And this I'm gonna stretch out. So I'm gonna press Ctrl T again and stretch this out. Just like that. Now I also have this rocket here. Let's see, where is it? Rocket. Also gonna place here. I'm not sure if this is gonna fit this image, so I'm gonna try. Let's put this rocket somewhere here, like he came with this rocket to this area. So we have to make these castles smaller, or else it doesn't look real. Just like that. So if you place things and press Ctrl T, you can make them smaller. Let's put this in the background. And let's see, maybe somewhere there, and he is somewhere there. All right, so this is the composite we have for now. So we have to make everything better now. Let's make this smaller. So the first thing is to make the composite as your idea. So this is the idea for now. And now we have to blend this better together. So make sure you don't see these corners here. So I have to place this correctly like this. Now we have to make sure that everything looks nice to blend this better together. To make this look more real, we have to blend everything together. So this means we have to make sure the lighting is correct, the colors are correct, and the quality of the images are somewhere correct. Now, let's start with blending the colors. You can see here the colors are really off. They don't look the same. It doesn't look like it's from the same place. So we need to start doing changes to the colors. Let's start off with these rocks here down here. Make sure to save your work. I just saved my work just in case. You can go here, file, save as, and save it, because if Photoshop crashes somehow, you're gonna lose everything and you don't want to lose it. So save your work. Now, these are the rocks. Let's create a folder by clicking this. And if I double click on group 1, the name, I can name this rocks and press enter, take the rocks and drag it inside it. So if you take it, drag it, you see this blue stuff going on, it's inside this folder. So it's time to make folders so we don't get confused. Now, the rocks, by clicking here and selecting hue and saturation, we can change the hue and saturation. Now, if you press this button here, it's only gonna affect the layer underneath it, so not all the other ones. So we only want to change the color of the rocks now. So I'm gonna press this and only affect the rocks. So first of all, let's take the saturation, and if we move to the left, we can remove the colors. If we move to the right, we can increase the colors. So let's remove some colors from it. Right, so this is a bit dark now. It's like an evening setting, so we need to remove a bit of the colors. I'm gonna bring it like -23, something like this. Now let's close this. We don't need this now. Obviously the boy is really orange here, so let's also make a folder and name this boy. Maybe if you're on photo, you can name this how you want, and click on this again and create hue and saturation again. Now you can see here, if I do this without pressing this button, it's gonna affect the whole thing. We only want the boy. So let's move this one to the left. He's really orange. So what you could also do here is press this button and you can pick a color from this layer. For instance, this, it's gonna show it. Okay, it thinks it's red. Now we can remove the red here. So we don't really remove the color from everything, just from this red. But I think let's use master and move this a bit to the left. It's also nice. All right, so this is already better. The colors look already better. Let's move this one. Now, if I click this and hold down Control, I can click on this layer and it will select automatically, or Command to make. Now, this is the Castle 2. Let's make a map. Castle 2. Put it in this folder, and just basically do the same. Use saturation. Click this again and move it a bit to the left. Now you have to make sure the colors are a bit the same. So first of all, let's do this for this other castle here. Same thing, castle. Put this in this folder. Create the hue and saturation. Press the button again and move it to the left. And you can already see we have some nice colors that fit this image. Now this rocket, I'm not sure about this rocket here. It's a bit annoying, I think. Maybe you can make it smaller, or I'll maybe probably remove it. Maybe it was a bad idea. Let's see. Let's do it without the rocket. It's kind of annoying now. Let's see. All right, so I'm gonna move all the stuff a bit up. So what I'm going to do is I select all these arrays by holding down shift and move this a bit up and move this boy here. So it's more in the center. All right, now we have did our color blending now. This is just for the beginning to make this look more real. And now we can work on the lighting. So the lighting, for the lighting, we need to make sure we use the same, like where does the light come from in this image? You can see in the background here, we have shadows here and the light is here. And let's see the other one. This one goes to the right. So obviously one of these castles has lighting from the other side. So the best thing to do this is to just watch those images, see where the original lighting came from and make sure it's from the same place. So for this, I'm just gonna go to this castle here to make sure it's from the same angle and go to edit, flip horizontal, and now we have lighting from the same side, right? So this will make the image look more realistic to make sure the lighting is the same. So I'm just gonna do this like that, or you can do it with this one. You can also flip that one to make sure the lighting comes from the same side, right? So this is also okay. So I'm gonna, let's see which one is better. Maybe the other one. I think the other one was better. So I'm gonna do the left one, flip horizontal to make sure the lighting comes from the same spot. Let's make it a bit bigger here. All right, now we can work on this image for the lighting. So first of all, I'm going to, let's close these folders so we don't get confused. I'm going to create a new folder on top of all the folders and double click on it and name this lighting and lighting. And now I'm gonna go here to select the brush tool, press right mouse brush tool or press B on your keyboard. Go here to the settings and bring the hardness all the way down. So you have a really soft brush. And here we have the opacity and flow. Let's leave that 100 so we have a good visible brush. Now we need to create a new layer first by clicking this. Now if you make this brush a bit bigger, you can also make it bigger here. And just make a dot like that. Now if you select the move tool, we can move the dot around. Now if you press Ctrl T or Command T to bring up the free transform, we can make it bigger like this. And we can make it a bit bigger and place somewhere lighting. Now we need to make sure we define the lighting will come from the left side here because we have obviously shadows on the right side of these images, except for this one. This boy doesn't really have shadow, so we have to create some shadows. Now let's place this somewhere there. This is where our lighting will come from, somewhere in the background on the left side to make this look more real. Now we have our lighting spot. Now we need to make sure the image looks better. So to correct the lighting, we need to work on everything. So let's first start off with these rugs. I'm gonna disable this boy for now so it doesn't distract me. So the rugs here, if we go here and we create a new layer on top of this, so a new adjustment layer, and select curves. And with the curves, we can edit the lighting. So these are the highlights in the curves. You can see here, if I move this to the left, the highlights will pop out. And these are the dark tones. You can see this, and the midtones are here. And you can select ranges in between. So first of all, I'm gonna bring the highlights down. And again, we need to press this button so we only affect the layer of these rugs. And you can see here, we got some darker, nice rugs. So let's make them like really darker than the original one to this point. Now, if we click on the mask here and we go here to brushes, select a brush tool, we can press D on your keyboard so you have default colors. If you select black, so just switch those, select black, make sure the opacity and flow here is at 100% and you have hardness at 0, just a soft round general brush. Make it a bit smaller and you can brush areas light again. So we have lighting coming from there. So we need to make some parts lighter, like for instance, the top parts of these rugs here, like there. and just gently brush the top parts a bit lighter. And that way we are creating more realistic darker and lighter areas. Also do it maybe on these parts. If you want to do this really precisely, you can zoom in and just do it like this. Just brush a bit of these rocks lighter so they don't get too dark, right? So maybe you want to also brush the 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 sand here. I'm not sure if you want to do that. I'm not gonna do it. I just want to do these rocks because they are sticking out. It will look really cool at the end. Now let's also do here. Let's do a bit there. The only part that I'm brushing is actually the top part and the left part because we have lighting coming from the left side and also from the top side because it's coming from up there. So it's gonna hit the left side and top side. Let's do a bit here. Just to make sure these rocks don't get too dark. Also do a bit here. Here. And you can see this already starts to look a bit better than just dark parts. Like that. Maybe also a bit here. Maybe this area will get some light. A bit here. Oh, need to do this a bit precisely. Now, we have this boy. I need to put this boy back so I can see where I need to brush. So these parts are okay. Now, once you have done these upper parts a bit lighter, let's see a bit here. Once you have made these top parts a bit lighter, we can click on this and we can adjust this. So don't do it like this. This is too much. So I'm going to make this a bit lighter because I feel like it's too dark. This is okay for now. Maybe this was a bad idea here. Let me brush this a bit back. So if you switch these colors, you can bring it back or remove it. Now, let's work on the contrast of these rocks. So I'm going to create a new contrast layer and this time the curves again. Make sure to press this and select the midtones here where this thing goes up and just bring it a bit up and down like that. So it's a bit darker. Now let's do the same for the boy now. To do the lighting on the boy, we have to do the same as with the rocks. So let's first make sure we select the right layer here and select the hue and saturation above it to create a new layer above everything of these layers. So select curves again. Make sure to press this and let's make them dark first like this. Try to be in the same range as the other stuff like this. And just close this one and click on the mask of it. Then go to the brush again, select the brush. And now you can brush parts lighter. So we need to make sure the left side is a bit lighter. I think we made him a bit too dark now, but we can always change that later. So let's first make the left side a bit lighter. Maybe also here. Just some parts that are sticking out that we need to make lighter. So this part here I will make a bit lighter, like that. Here. Let's make the brush smaller here, just like that. Also here. Let's make his face lighter. And here. So then make sure you can see his face. I don't want to have it too dark. If you have your own photo, you have to watch how your photo is. So let's also make the NASA here lighter, just like that. This is a bit creative now, so does it look real? So I have to go here to the curves, double click on it and make it a bit lighter. I think he's too dark. Now, this is the first step to do. Now, the next thing is to create a new layer on top of it. Press right mouse and create a clipping mask. Then go to edit. With the clipping mask, I forgot to tell you that that's actually the same as this button that we do to make sure it's only working inside this layer. So we created a clipping mask. You can see this arrow here. And if I'm gonna go to edit fill, select 50% gray, press OK. It's gonna create 50% gray layer. If I change the blend mode to overlay, we won't see this layer anymore. But if we're gonna use one of these tools here, we will see the effect of this tool. So I'm gonna use here the burn tool. With the burn tool, we can make areas darker, and with the dodge tool lighter. And with the sponge tool, you can make areas with less color. So you remove colors. We want to use the burn tool here. So select the burn tool, select highlights here, and let's start off with 50%. Now, if I make this brush smaller, I can make areas darker. You can see here I will brush the right part a bit darker to blend this better. So let's start with brushing. You see here shadows in his clothing. I would also brush that. It will make the image look cool at the end. Not too much, just a little bit. And also these parts darker at the bottom here. And start with brushing parts darker, especially on the right side because we have lighting on the left side now. Let's also make here a bit darker behind him and here. And just basically brush these parts darker. Also this clothing here, just to make it more creative. Now, let's make sure all these areas here are darker. Here, a bit here. Also his face on this side, inside his helmet. So this photo was really light because it was taken at the studio. This is a stock photo. And you want to make sure you brush parts darker so we have some nice shadows in this composite. So this is for now fine. You can even remove this to check it. And now I'm going to switch to midtones here and I'm going to drop the exposure. And this way it looks more natural when you have a final design. So let's bring it down to, let's see, 25 is fine here. And just do the same with a bigger brush. Just a bit brushing. There. Let's see. There. Just a bit darker on these areas again. And at last the shadows and drop the exposure again. And brush again. If you brush too much, you're gonna get this red thing, so it's burnt too much. Don't try to avoid that red stuff. All right, I think this is fine for now. The curves I had here, I think it's too dark, so I'm gonna increase this again so it looks more natural, right? So that was way too dark. All right, so now we have to move on to the next thing. So we have lighting for now. This is fine for now. I would maybe give him a bit more contrast. So I'm gonna create the curves again on top of these layers. Press this again. And move this a bit like that. Just a bit of the midtones down so you have a bit more contrast. Now let's save this work and do the lighting for the background. All right, so in the background, we have these castles here and also this rocket ship, which I don't know where to place it yet. Let's do that later. I have these castles here, so I want to move this a bit around. And when you have stuff in the background, it needs a little bit more grayish color. So it's really, it has to be less contrast. So to do this, we can just double click on this background layer to bring up the layer style here. And if we select color overlay like this, you can see here, this makes a color overlay. We can click on the color here and let's pick a color from the background. For instance, this grayish. Press OK. And if we bring the opacity a bit down, we can make sure we don't have it too much, just a little bit to make it a bit grayish, just like that. And this will make it look more realistic. You can also try this color maybe. I think this lighter is better. Now, just maybe in between. This is just to blend this better with the background. Now press OK. And if we press right mouse, copy layer style, we can copy this layer style and go to this castle, press right mouse, paste layer style. It's going to copy these settings to that one. Now you can also take the opacity and bring it slightly down. Let's say around 90. Don't do too much or else we have like castle that's transparent. We only want to have it better in the background. So let's bring it down to maybe 85 is fine. Let's do the same for this castle. And this will make it blend better with the background. As you can see here, it's somewhere in the background. Maybe this was too much. Let's do 90. I think 90 is fine. And this one also. Somewhere around 90. All right, so this will make the background better. These rocks here also need to have a little bit of grayish tint in the background because it looks like it has too much contrast on these areas here. So we could do is take these rocks and if we create a new layer on top of these, press right mouse and create a clipping mask. Then go to your brush. You can see here we can brush inside this layer. And now let's pick something like this background where it ends. It's a little bit grayish here. And we can brush a bit on the top parts here. Now let's drop the opacity here so we don't do it too much, just a bit here. And also the flow, and just brush a bit on these top parts so it blends better, just like that. Now if it's too much, you can also bring down the opacity. I don't want to have too much, I just want to blend this better with the background. Maybe a bit more grayish. Let's try a bit grayish. Let's see how that looks. This green was better. So try to use this green from the background. It will make this better. Just like that. And you can already see the difference here. You can see this goes better in the background. It looks more real for this image. Now, we have these clouds here. I want to move them a bit around. You can see here it goes a little bit through this castle when you move it, but it doesn't matter because you won't see that in the final result. Now, if we press Ctrl T, we can bring up the free transform, and if we rotate it like this, we can change the whole cloud. Now, I want to make it, I think, something like this maybe. And you can use your own imagination for this. Maybe you want it somewhere like that. Just try out different parts where you like this, and maybe you will find something better than me. I'm just gonna move this a bit around to try to make this whole composite look a bit more interesting. I think this is fine. Now, we had this lighting here, and let's move it around so it's placed somewhere there. All right, so this is fine for now. At this point, we have the basic idea. We did a bit of correcting things, but it's time to make things look better. So we still have this rocket here. I think I'm gonna select this rocket now, and let's put this also in a folder. This will be rocket. If I press Ctrl T, I can make this bigger. Maybe we can place it here, like really big, like it's behind those rocks somewhere there. So we still use that one. Now, of course, it looks a bit off now, so we have to change the color of it. So I'm gonna add use saturation again, like we did before. Press this button here, so we only affect the layer of the rocket. And let's bring the color down here, like that. Let's also do curves. Press this button again, and let's bring the highlights down. And take a brush, and let's bring up the opacity flow again to 100. And let's brush this side a bit. Oh, let's make the brush smaller, just on the left side here, to get some nice lighting. All right, I think this already looks pretty good. All right, now we need to make this a bit better. Like I mentioned before, this boy, I think he's too big now. So I'm gonna select this whole layer and make him smaller. Let's make him, that's way too small, a bit smaller, like this. The orange suit of him, I think it doesn't really fit this image. So I'm gonna go here, use saturation again, and even remove some more color from it. Let's also do the reds here and try to remove that orange a bit more, like that. And this already looks better in this image. Now, let's also draw some shadow for this boy. So I'm gonna go here, click on the layer, this one, click to create a new layer, drag it inside this folder, and take a brush. Let's click on the color here first and sample some color from this rock, for instance. Make it a bit darker by bringing it down. Press OK, and then zoom in here, and we need to make some shadows. So first, let's change the opacity here to 20 and the flow also. So 20. That is fine to start. Let's make the brush a bit smaller here. And start with clicking. Now, when you click and you brush, you can see here I make shadows. Now, to make this more realistic, we need to change the blend mode here to multiply. And with multiply, it's gonna look more realistic. Now, let's do a bit on this side. So basically, I'm just brushing some shadows here. Just a little shadow here to blend this better with this image. And you can already see it makes a big difference as when you don't have shadows. So here, just these parts like on the right side of his feet. And you can hear I click a lot of times here, so I can make sure It's really dark on these parts and a little bit darker on these parts. Also here, a bit darker here, here. All right, so these are the shadows that make this image a lot better. Let's also do a bit there, a bit there. All right, now we have shadows. Let's also make sure he has a little bit more contrast. So I'm gonna create a curves layer here and take these midtones and bring it a bit down like that. This looks already better. Now I think these curves that we did before this one is still a bit too dark. So I'm gonna slightly play around with these to make sure it fit this image right. I think this is right for now. All right, the next thing to do is these rocks. These rocks can look a little bit better. So I will also brush this again. So you can see I do a lot of things again, because when you do something first time, you have to correct it every time. So it's actually not that simple to just make something and think, all right, it's gonna look good. No, you have to correct things every time you create something. So you can see here, I'm gonna correct the lighting with these curves here. I think the top part looks better if we create these parts a lot lighter, like there. And the front part, for instance, here will be darker because we are blocking light here by these rocks here, for instance. So these parts will be darker and the background will be a bit lighter, like that. And now it's time to add some special effects like mist and creating depth. Now, the first thing I would like to do here is to create a bit more depth. So we have these castles in the background. I want to blur them out to create more depth in this image. So first, let's select this castle here. Then go to Edit, Blur, Gaussian Blur. And with a Gaussian blur, we can blur this out. And you can see here, it looks like we have more focus on this boy now. You can set here the amount of blur you want. So I think somewhere in this range is fine. Press OK. That's it. Now let's do the same for the other castle here. So I'm just going to click on the layer again. Then go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. And let's keep the radius the same because they are somewhere at the same range in the background. And you can see already this makes a lot different. It looks way more cooler now. All right, so now we can do some other stuff to make this better. So I'm gonna close these folders for now. I wanna add some mist to this to make it more mysterious. So for this, I'm going to use a brush. And here I have these SS Mist brushes. I will link these brushes also in this project file so you can just install those. If you wanna know how to install, you go to your brushes and here you can import brushes and then you select that file and it's added to your brushes folder here. So you can also download a lot of brushes on the internet. They are free mostly. If you search on Google for free Photoshop brushes, there are a lot of kind of brushes you can download. You have like sunbeams or other mist or clouds and stuff like that. It's really cool. For this, we're gonna use the mist. So let's select the mist here. And here we have a lot of kind of different mist. So let's first make sure where we want the mist. We want the mist between the rocks and these castles. So these are the rocks here, and this is the castle. So probably between these two layers. So I'm gonna create a new layer here first and drag it between these two. And this will be our mist. Now, here we can select the color for the mist. I think we need something a bit grayish like this, like the background. Let's make it smaller. And here we can set the opacity and flow, how much you want the mist. I think it's fine for now. And I'm gonna brush a bit there, there, there. And you can see here we create some cool mist in the background now. You can also be more creative. You can also add some mist, maybe behind the rocket. Let's see, where is our rocket? Here, in front of the rocket, maybe a bit here, to create some mysterious effect there. Try to change the color of the mist sometimes to create a bit more different kind of color mist, maybe a bit darker there. Just a bit of variations here. I think this is already fine. Now this is our mist. We can also drop the opacity here to blend this better. Just a little bit, like 80, 90, something like this. All right, you can also do a bit mist in these rocks here. So I created a new layer on top of this and I'm gonna also do a bit here, like it's going on these rocks now. Just a bit there. I think this is too much. And try to use different brushes here. We have other brushes here. Maybe a bit in the sky here. These brushes have some weird square here going on, so if you accidentally use that image, just erase it with the eraser. Let's see, let's try another one. Let's change the color here a bit. Oh, something lighter. Maybe this one is nice. Let's make it smaller. All right, I think this is fine for now for the mist. I don't want to overdo it. Maybe a bit more behind him also. All right, I think this looks fine for a mist now. Try to avoid the front here. We have here the front. Usually you only see mist in the background and not like close to the camera. So try to avoid these parts here at the front. Maybe a bit here, not much. Okay, I think the background can be a little bit lighter. So I'm gonna go here to the background. I have created a new layer here. As you can see here, let me show you how to create a new layer. In case you forget this, create a new layer. And then take a brush and select the soft round brush again. Pick white as the color. Make sure the opacity and flow is at 100 and your hardness is at 0. And now if I just click here, I can make this really cool background light effect. I think this is better, so we have a little bit more contrast between the background and this foreground. So this is nice. This looks better. All right, let's correct some things here. We can also create a little bit of light effects. If we go all the way up here, create a new layer. And then we have this brush again. We can create this light. And now I can just move this around. And maybe I want to create some sort of light effect coming from there, somewhere in the background, to make this more interesting. So let's create that there. If we press Ctrl or Command J, we can duplicate this layer. And I'm gonna move this to some other sides just to make this all more interesting to look at. And just gonna rotate this a bit there. Just some sort of light effects in the background to make this look really cool. Now let's also do somewhere there. Let's see if this works. Maybe somewhere there. So basically I'm just placing these little light effects in this background to create a bit more like some lighting is going on there. Let's see if this works. I think this is fine. Maybe smaller here. So basically I'm just copying these light things. Now this is fine for now. Let's work even more on the lighting. We had this, let's see, I have a lot of layers now, so it's a bit difficult now to organize things. This was the big lighting. I'm gonna move the big lighting a bit here. If I press Ctrl Command T, hold down Ctrl or Command, take one corner, I can stretch it out like that, and I can put it more into this frame. So let's make this bigger. And now it's gonna go over this boy. So we create this really cool lighting in the foreground now, and to also blend this image better. All right, let me save the work now again. The boy needs a bit more shadow here. I think we can create a nice shadow of him. So I'm gonna find the boy layer here, this one. Let's open up the folder. And I'm gonna select all these layers, but not the shadow layer here, all these. So if you hold down Shift, select all these layers, press Ctrl J to duplicate them, press Ctrl E or Command E on Mac to make it one layer. Now, if I go to Edit Transform, I can flip this vertical. If I press Ctrl or Command U, I can bring up the hue and saturation. And here I can bring the lightness all the way down. So make it black. This will be his shadow. Now let's move this layer down here underneath all those. And let's move him here. So we can create a shadow of him. Of course, it doesn't go in the right direction now. So if we hold down, if you press Control T or Command T, we can bring up the free transform again. And if I'm gonna hold down Control or Command to make, I can take one corner and stretch it out that way. Let's take this corner now and stretch it out. And let's move it a bit here. It doesn't really have to be precisely, just a little shadow to make this a little bit better. Now let's press enter. You can see here, we can even brush parts. So I'm gonna take a brush here and bring the hardness up. So for instance, these parts need to be black because this is where his shoe starts, and make it like that and like that. So this is probably fine. Just like that, just a little shadow. Now, of course, it doesn't look real. So we have to give it a bit of a blur. So I'm gonna first make a smart object here, right mouse smart object. So if we add some blur, we can always change the values later. Now I'm gonna add some Gaussian blur to this. Just a little bit, not much. Like that. Press OK. And now if I make a mask, I can brush parts away. So I'm gonna brush some parts away. Oh, let's first make sure the hardness is at 0 of our brush. So we have like soft edge. So this is fine. Let's see. Let's brush a bit away. Oh, let's brush here. Here. Just a little shadow. And if we change the opacity here, we are making sure it looks real. So bring the opacity all the way down. Maybe we can bring back the shadow here. Let's see how that looks. I'm just trying out here to see how this will look with this shadow. Let's brush a bit there. Something like this is fine. All right, this is just a little shadow to make it look more real. Let's remove it there. All right, now we have a little extra shadow. It isn't much, but okay. It will help at the end. Now we need to make sure the whole overall image has the right colors. So let's first maybe make this rocket a bit smaller. Maybe something like this. And now I have to move this lighting a bit to there. This is fine. All right, so let's move on to add some special effects. I'm going to create a new layer and just take a white brush. And I'm going to take these, place these little dots. So I'm making the brush bigger, smaller, bigger. Oh, click a couple times. Smaller, click a couple times. Maybe even smaller. So these are just particles that I'm creating now to make this whole image a little bit more interesting. Let's create some more. Like these are flying around everywhere. Let's do some here. Here. All right. Now this is enough, I think. Maybe a bit more here. And now if I press if I change the opacity here, I can make them a bit more grayish. I don't want to see them too much, just a little bit. So at this point, we are almost done with this. And now the fun part starts where we can change the colors and stuff like that. So I'm going to go all the way up here. Oh, let's first work on the boy here. He needs a little bit more contrast. So I'm going to click the layer above him. There's somewhere here. And then add brightness contrast. Make sure this is pressed so only affect his layer, and give him some contrast. I feel like he's a bit too gray, so a bit more contrast will be better. All right, now let's move all the way up here. Now, if I take a brush here and for instance, maybe something bluish, make sure it's on a new layer. So create a new layer. And bring the hardness to 0 and opacity and flow at 100 and just make a dot like this. Now, if I change this blend mode to overlay or color, I can make like this color effect in this image. So let's press Ctrl T or Command T and make this really big. And I could, for instance, make this part a little bit more bluish. You can also do overlay here. You can see how cool this is to create some cool like fantasy colors in this whole design. So maybe you can add some color to this, like something like this. Let's make it a bit smaller. So let's make the left side, sorry, a bit bluish, like there's something blue going on. Now, if you want to make another color, you can also do another color if you want. Let's change the color here. And maybe, for instance, you want that side like greenish. Just do the same, change the blend mode to overlay and move it there. Now, let's make this big again. And this will make like really weird colors now. So if you want to change this color, press Ctrl U and just move this hue slider around to another color if you want. So this is if you really want to create something creative. I'm not gonna do this side. I'm just gonna do the left side a bit bluish. I think I like this when it's blue. Now let's move on now. Oh, let me remove this. Let me move this really to the left. All right, so the next step to do is to give this whole image more colors. So what I'm going to do is I'm gonna add a gradient map, and here I'm gonna select black to white like that. Put it in reverse so you can see this better. Press OK and change blend mode to overlay or soft light. Let's do soft light here and bring the opacity down so we get a bit more contrast in this image. Just a little bit. Now the next thing is to add another one, and this time I'm gonna select color lookup and select tree strip, and this will give the image color, and this is a really nice LUT you can use. Let's bring the opacity a bit down. So I'm not sure about this blue. It is cool, but it is something you need to decide for yourself. You want some cool colors in your image. I think I'm gonna remove it for now. All right, let's go up here, create a new layer, and press Command Alt Shift E. So we made a duplicated version of everything. Then if we press right mouse, convert to a smart object, then go to Filter, Camera Raw. In the Camera Raw, we can do final adjustments. Now, the color I'm not going to change here. I'm going to play with the settings. So for the exposure, we can maybe bring it a little bit up. Now, the contrast, let's bring the contrast first down so it blends better, because I feel like this looks better now. And the highlights here, let's see, maybe a bit less highlights. The shadows we can make darker by moving them to the left. And let's see the whites. If we increase the whites, we get this nice light effect. Just a little bit more. Let's see the blacks here. All right, so the texture and the clarity is always interesting to look, because the whole image changes with these settings. So usually I play around with these, bring the texture to the left so the image gets more soft, and move the clarity to the right so we still see all the details. Now let's move on. Let's see what we have here. Dehaze to give it a bit more contrast, just like that. And let's move on here. Now we can play with the highlights here again. If we want to create some really cool highlights in the background. Let's see the lights here. Let's bring this a bit down. And the darks here a bit to the right. Just like that. All right, let's see what we have here. We can do some noise reduction. We don't really have noise, so let's do it a bit like this. All right, the color mixer is where you can really be creative with the colors. So you can see here his suit was really red, so you can change that here. Of course, his face also changes a bit, so I wouldn't mess with it too much. You can play it with the saturation here for the colors. I think we can remove some yellow from the stones. Probably won't need much to do here. You can also play with the lighting here a bit. All right, let's move on. We need some vignette in this image, so I'm gonna add some vignette so we have more focus on this boy here. And if you go to effects, we can also do some more vignette here. Probably not too much, just a little bit. Like that. And here you can also be creative with the colors. If you want to change the color of your suit, for instance. I think this is fine for now. I don't want to mess with this too much. Just like this. All right, now I'm gonna go to OK to save this, and it got a little bit better. All right, so at this point, most of the stuff is done. To make this better, I'm gonna create a new layer and press Command Alt Shift E and use the blur tool here to blur out the edges between this boy in the background so this blends better together. So if you do this correctly, go around the edge, it will blend better in this image like it's one photo instead of paste it into this like we did. So just go around the edge like this to make the edge a bit softer like this. So this is just to correct things at the end. You could also do this earlier. I didn't do this because I was too busy with the old design. So actually right now is the fun part of everything because you can get creative now with the colors. So let me just quickly do this now to make this a little bit better. Just like that. It doesn't have to be really precisely. Don't make the brush too big like I did. Make it a bit smaller. All right, now to be more creative, you can create a new gradient map on top of this. I have these 105 inspiring B gradients. I will also link these. You can just import these into Photoshop, and you can see here we can change the whole color of this image. Now, if I, for instance, change this to, let's see, maybe we can do, oh, hold on. If we change this to pin light, let's see, pin light, we can create like really creative colors. So I'm gonna go through these to see maybe if I like one of these. You can change the whole setting of this image now. So let me find something that's really creative to change the whole image of this. So this is just a personal preference. If you wanna get like really colorful stuff going on in your design, try out one of these. You can also edit these by just taking these colors and changing them. But I just want to use something that's already here. Let's see what we have here. I think we can find something really interesting. I like this one. This one looks pretty creative. So I'm going to use this one for this design. I think this looks really nice. Makes it a little bit more happy, I think. And now let's add some curves to this to finalize this. Just moving the sliders like that. You can change the values here to red to change the colors. Then green, change this one also if you want to. And blue. I think I'm gonna leave it like this. You can also add color balance to finalize your colors. Maybe you want to add some blue, which you can do here. Something like this. I don't think it's even needed. Now I'm gonna create a new layer again. You can see how much times I created a new layer and then press Command Alt Shift E again. So I have duplicated version and I want to add a little bit of blur. So I'm gonna go to Blur Gallery and select Fill Blur. And here I'm gonna set the blur value to 0. If I hold down Alt or Option on Mac, I can copy these settings. So I don't want blur here. I want a bit of blur here in the foreground. And here, probably here a bit. Let's blur this out. And I don't want blur here, just these corners a bit there. No blur here, just a bit there and there. Maybe even more. And this will give an effect like we have focus on this boy and not on the foreground. All right, I'm gonna press OK here. This is enough blur. And this is pretty much done. You can always just add your own imagination to this and change stuff like I did here with the color. You can play around with that. Change the blend mode here to overlay. So you can create some nice colors. Just try out different stuff. The best way to learn is to just try out stuff and see how that changes your image. So that is pretty much it for this one. Thank you for watching. I hope you learned something new and try to be as creative as possible. And maybe catch you on the next class.